In these times of uncertainty, it's all the more important that we keep collaborating, informing, and inspiring each other, so that we can be smarter and better tomorrow. Welcome to the Pakhuis de Zwijger livecast.
Welcome everybody to the program, the World Press Photo House #1, connecting the world to the stories that matter. We will highlight today the winners of the photo contest 2020, and we have special guests and elements from our program, from our festival that we were supposed to happen in Amsterdam in April. Of course, that could not take place, and we have this program as a replacement partly for that. My name is Lars Boering. I'm the moderator of today. I'm also the managing director of the World Press Photo Foundation, and today we will have a rich and exciting program for you. You can participate if you want to through Zoom. You can ask questions and you can have a chat with other viewers. This program has been made possible with the partners of World Press Photo. We're happy to see the Nationale Postcode Loterij, Aegon and PwC to be our supporters. And we're also happy to see them, the colleagues of them, to participate and watch this show today. The World Press Photo Foundation believes in the stories that matter, the power of showing and also seeing high quality images. It all began in 1955, and here's an introduction video to show you what World Press Photo is about.
In 1955, a group of Dutch photographers organized an international contest to expose their work to a global audience. 42 photographers from 11 countries submitted 310 photos. And this became the first World Press Photo of the Year. The annual tradition of the World Press Photo Contest was born. Every year, a jury of leading professionals judges the large number of submitted photos. And there have been many notable firsts. The first Color Photo of the Year winner, the first Female Photo of the Year winner, a selection of the world's best-known photographic icons.
De wereldprijs ging naar Malcolm Brown voor diens foto van een brandende monnik in Saigon.
The World Press Photo Foundation has been working from its home in Amsterdam as an independent, non-profit organization for more than 60 years. In that time, the world has changed continuously, and new developments in the media and technology have transformed journalism and storytelling, reflected in the Digital Storytelling Contest, first introduced in 2011.
I don't care what nobody thinks. I don't have to change myself for people to accept me.
In Waypoint, you could tap your way through the different stories.
The World Press Photo Foundation is now more than a contest. Each year, in more than 45 countries, millions see the exhibition.
It really opens my eyes to what is happening around the world.
For me personally, this might give me some creative ideas, like how to take photo. Fantastic for me to see those kind of works.
Many more view these stories in our online magazine or through our social media channels.
Thank you all so much. It's such a privilege to be here.
Our mission has expanded, and we draw on our experience to guide visual journalists, storytellers, and audiences through this challenging and exciting landscape.
Well, we're back with the workshop participants, this time in Istanbul.
We develop emerging photographers and storytellers. Our Joopsvaart Masterclass began in 1994. and it is being replicated in a global program.
We need to come and tell our stories in the best way we know how and in the best way that we can.
Our new programs encourage diverse accounts of the world that present stories from different perspectives. Today, we are a global platform connecting the world to the stories that matter.
The World Press Photo House is the home for the stories that matter. And due to COVID-19, we had to close the house, the office, but also the exhibition that we had in place. This is why we'd like to share you today some things that we had in mind at the festival and the online program. In collaboration with Pakhuis de Zwijger, we will guide you through a very diverse and rich program. Focusing a lot on the worldwide theme protest, something that was highlighted a lot in the World Press Photo Contest this year and also in the exhibition. Today we have guests from all over the globe. We will have the Photo of the Year winner Yasuyoshi Chiba zooming in. We will see the work by Romain Laurando. Curator Colette Olof will guide us through the exhibition in the house that we had not been able to open. And through Zoom connections, we will talk to Mulugeta Ayena, Aida Moulinet from Ethiopia, Stephen Wilkes from New York, who will talk live here in the studio with Ilfi Nikokachin, and we will show some clips from Disturb. Also in from Hong Kong will be journalist Gwyneth Kwai Lam Ho, and we will talk about the current situation there. So let's first start with portraits, video portraits we made from the winners of the Photo of the Year and the Photo Story of the Year. The World Press Photo of the Year honors the photographer whose visual creativity and skills made a picture that captures or represents an event or issue of great journalistic importance in that year. It has come to be regarded as the most prestigious international award for photojournalism in the world. And the Story of the Year honors the photographer whose visual creativity and skills produced a story with excellent editing and sequencing that captures or represents an event or issue of great journalistic importance of that year. We will now see two video portraits, one of Romain Laurando, and we will see also a portrait of Yasuyoshi Chiba.
This youth was described like lost. There was something fundamental was happening there. I'm Romain Laurando, I'm 44 years old and I'm a French photographer. Ho means brother. It's a connection, and it was a symbol for me because in those neighborhoods there was a lot of story, but they are together. When I arrived in Algeria, everything was quiet. Just young guy in the street who are bored and frustrated. It was not the misery of lack of food or a roof over the heads. It was the misery of the absence of dreams. All those young guys in the poor neighborhood demonstrated. Once a week they're in the stadium and they are together. And they are powerful, they are free. It was very emotional because I think it's a first step, but it's a very important step. I met so kind and so nice people, and without them I can't do anything at all. I live all my time with them, and at the end I am like them. It's a universal story. It's people face ideology. You know, all those people are the base of the demonstration. Without them, nothing would happen.
I thought the scene was beautiful. The simple fact that people recite poems for protesting in such a difficult circumstance. My name is Yasuyoshi Chiba, a Japanese photographer working for AFP based in Kenya. It was my first assignment in Sudan. After the Sudanese army overthrew longtime president, thousands of protesters were holding a sit-in to demand civilian rule. When I arrived in Khartoum, all protesters were gone. 2 weeks before my arrival, the peaceful sit-in was dispersed by an unknown military-figured group, and more than 100 people were killed. After the tragedy, the mobile internet had been shut down. One night, my colleagues and I went to a residential area where opposition leaders set a meeting with people to brief their updates. The place was a total blackout. Then, unexpectedly, people started clapping hands in the dark. People held up mobile phones to illuminate a young man in the center. He recited a famous protesting poem and improvised one. Between his breath, everyone shouted, "Thawra," the word revolution in Arabic. His facial expression and voice impressed me. I could not stop focusing on him to capture the moment as the determination of all. I hope this picture attracts attention to the situation in Sudan until their election in 2022.
Yasuyoshi Chiba is Agence France Presse chief photographer for East Africa and the Indian Ocean, currently based in Nairobi, Kenya. After studying photography at the Masashino Art University in Tokyo, he started working as a staff photographer for Asahi Shimbun. He became a freelance photographer and moved to Kenya in 2007, joined AFP in Brazil in 2011. He's been winning at World Press Photo in 2009, in 2012, and this year he won the Photo of the Year award. Yasuyoshi Chiba is joining us live from Nairobi, Kenya. Hello, Yasuyoshi. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lars.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm at home always.
Not working outside?
Sometimes, a little bit.
Sometimes.
Yes.
You have to as a photographer, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it like to be out there and photographing on the street? How do you do that? Do you protect yourself in a certain way?
Yes, we really care about those protecting ourselves, but it's really difficult to know how the virus come to us. So it's a bit difficult situation for us.
Yeah. Are there any other stories? I mean, COVID-19 is a story that is also a story in Nairobi. Are there any other stories that you can still work on, or is it basically only working on this COVID-19 story?
Basically, we are focusing on COVID-19.
Yeah. You've been winning before at World Press Photo, but last week we surprised you with the main award. What did that mean for you? Were you surprised?
Of course. It was my biggest surprise in my career. I didn't expect anything. I was really lucky to be selected as a nominee. But still, I cannot believe it because all through this announcement, everything I receiving at my home.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it's different. We did a Zoom meeting for all the winning photographers, and then we announced you as a winner. It was beautiful and it was touching, but it was not the same as, because you have been before in Amsterdam with us when you had won an award. So yeah, it is, the Zoom screen doesn't replace the reality, I would say, in this case.
Nice.
What does it impact has it on you? I mean, you're at home, but there's a massive amount of media about World Press Photo every year. This year we reached 300 million people with it. Do you notice this, that a lot of requests come in?
I didn't expect this impact so big among the world, because even I got appreciation letter from my raised city. It's called the Saiki city in the southern part of Japan.
Wow.
So I really recognize this World Press Photo is a huge media.
Yeah. Does it make Japan proud?
I hope so.
I hope so. Yeah, I think so. I think that that the messages that we got through from Japan were very, very honored and very proud of you as a photographer. In your video, you talk about being so drawn to this scene, the boy in the middle, now 16 years old. Can you tell me what that is? You walk around, you see this scene. Is that the eye that you have developed as a photographer, that you see a certain scene that you have to photograph?
Well, actually, this, as I told, it was totally blackout, and also it was just a meeting. So I didn't expect anything. And at the scene, there was no lights. So I just, honestly, I'm disappointed. I was disappointed. It's impossible to shoot without light. I didn't bring my flash. So, and then happened this.
Yeah. The boy has been tracked down and an interview has been done with him. He was so surprised that this photo was world news. I think that is something also that is similar to what you have. The good news is that I think there's an organization trying to give him a very big education grant at this moment. So the effect of a photo like that can be traveling quite a long way. Did you ever see that with a photo that you have made yourself?
Actually, I tried to reach him, but so far no reply from him. But our colleague in Khartoum already interviewed him. According to the article, he was also surprised, and also he was called a fighter from the teachers.
Yeah.
At his school. He was 15.
You work for Agence France Presse, AFP, a very successful agency, I must say, because in the last years they have been winning many awards at World Press Photo, but also at other contests. Is it important for you to be connected to an agency like that?
Yes.
In what way?
Because news agency has a strong network to reach to all the media in the world.
Yeah, and you feel supported also by them as well.
Yes, it's really, we are receiving a lot of freedom, what to shoot. Mm-hmm. So that's really advantage for me to work for this company.
In these days where photography is all over and to being a professional photographer, do you think support like that is crucial for you to keep going?
Yes, it's very important because without showing images, that's the waste of my work. So the meaning of showing to the world is very important to have this channel.
I have a final question for you. When you were sending in the photos, did you ever expect the photo that won the photo of the year, the one to be the main winner?
Of course not.
No? Can always be a surprise.
But I like that photo.
Yeah, we all like that photo. Thank you very much, Yasuyoshi Chiba. Arigato. And we hope to see you. We hope to see you live soon. And be safe and enjoy your winning photo. And I hope that we'll see much more from you in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I will now introduce to you the house and the exhibition. In March 2019, World Press Photo moved its office to a place in the Westergaspark in Amsterdam. We call it the World Press Photo House, the house that has the stories that matter. After 65 years, being originally from the city of Amsterdam, we see it as a way to give back a public space to the city that we were born in. A world that is more visually oriented than ever before, a free press, freedom of speech, and a free flow of information is more important than ever before. And we as an organization also find it very important to have a place where we can have all the photographers that are in town visit us. We have a photo book library. We have a beautiful photo book shop, Photo Queue by World Press Photo. And with the help of the Dutch Postcard Lottery, we've been opening up the space. We use it to educate a generation of visual storytellers, schools, kids, whatever we feel that is necessary to get the visual storytelling across. Now, due to COVID-19, we had to close it for the public. We installed an exhibition and we didn't open it for one day. We also had to cancel our festival, and the exhibition is still there. To show what the exhibition is about and how it looks, we have curator Colette Olof to guide us through the exhibition and to show the one that is currently installed in the World Press Photo House.
My name is Colette Olof. I'm working as a curator in the World Press Photo House, and I'm responsible for the exhibition we will make in the house and the program we can make in the house and sometimes also outside of the house. For my first exhibition, I was very much inspired by the main theme of 2019, which is protests. And I was very happy to see that coming back again in the contest, where all the winners, or a lot of winners, also made beautiful documentary stories on protests. And my main theme I chose for the exhibition were the Hong Kong protests, because many people are seeing that as like the most important protest of 2019, where a lot of new strategies and tactics were developed by the protesters, and other protests later in the rest of the world were inspired by, and they used some of the tactics and the techniques that they had seen in the Hong Kong protests. So the title I chose for the exhibition is Be Water, and I actually took that from the protesters themselves, who call their whole protest Be Water, and that quote was from a very famous Bruce Lee interview from television in 1971. And there he explains his philosophy, Be Water, and the Be Water philosophy you can find back in the tactics that are used by the Hong Kong protesters. So one of the main artists in the exhibition is the photographer Lam Yik Fai. He shot a beautiful series for the New York Times, portraying all the protesters with a small explanation why they're part of the protest. For example, a college dropout in Hong Kong who says, "Freedom and rights can't be asked for, you have to fight for them." The exhibition focuses on the tactics of all the protesters, and one of the photojournalists that captures really well all the different tactics is Ivan Abro. It's a photojournalist living in Hong Kong but originally from Brazil. He is showing very well how the protesters make use of makeshift materials. So the students from the high schools and university are at the core of this movement, and they creatively use materials and objects from home to protest. So you see a lot of images with cardboard plates or trash can lids, umbrellas, laser pens, spray paint. The exhibition also showcases some videos explaining some more background information on the protests.
大家好啊，我係阿詩。咁其實我哋係玩1:6 figure 嘅，即係以我為例啦。咁其實我都玩咗大概有8年嘅時間㗎啦。香港嘅重要嘅事情其實唔算話好多，但係今次你話呢一個運動其實我哋覺得可以嘗試去創作嘅。
World Press Photo House exhibitions is not to only show photographers, but to take storytelling at large. So next to the photographers, I also invited 3 contemporary artists, and they were inspired by the theme of protest, and one of them even made a special work. The artists who are related to these subjects are, for example, Koos Buster, who is a Dutch ceramic artist, and he made for us, inspired by the images he has seen on the Hong Kong protests, these different pylons. He made 2 pylons in ceramics, a protest helmet, and a gas mask. Various cultural influences can be seen in these political posters. Styles and aesthetics from Japanese manga and animations are frequently adapted. The World is Watching from Herbert Luciol. It's an artist duo existing of Letizia Migliore and Barnaby Monk. They explore and develop a variety of tools for a post-capitalist transition under the name of Herbert Luciol. Herbert Luciol seeks to convey a more extensive understanding of protests and protesters to a larger audience. They are using strategic elements and optics from mainstream media to put a new aesthetic lens on activist movements involving public disobedience. The surveillance speaker V2 from Dries de Porter, a Belgian artist from 2018, is an installation about the surveillance and artificial intelligence. The artwork showcases in a critical way the latest breakthroughs in computer vision software. The surveillance speaker exists out of a camera, a computer, and a speaker. Through the speaker, we hear what the camera sees in a sentence that starts with "I see."
Okay. I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Water, my friend. One of our partners at the festival was the Dutch broadcasting organization VPRO. Their program Tegenlicht, they broadcasted in late 2019 a doc on the Hong Kong riots made by Floris Jan Luyn. They brought us into contact with Gwyneth Kwai Lam Ho, and she's a journalist at that time living in Amsterdam. She helped us and them with the Tegenlicht documentary, but also came into the house and to talk about the exhibition with curator Colette Olof. Gwyneth Kwai Lam Ho is an independent journalist, and she has been a Hong Kong journalist specializing in feature writing on politics, social movements in the Greater China region. Extensively writing about social movements, elections, and ideological shifts in Hong Kong in 2012. Welcome, Gwyneth, to be our guest in our program.
Hi, I'm from Hong Kong.
You are back in Hong Kong, having lived in Amsterdam for a while. What did you do in Amsterdam?
I was a master's student in journalism in the University of Amsterdam, and I'm very honored that I have the chance to share the story about the Hong Kong protests and how brave the Hong Kong protesters are in Amsterdam. Yeah, I was invited to a lot of seminars, and I see a very passionate concern about Hong Kong from the European communities. Yeah. So thank you.
How is it for you as a journalist to cover the protest? I understood that you at one time also had been assaulted. Is it really a difficult situation to be in all the time?
Yeah, it's actually very dangerous, and a lot of journalists are joking that we are war reporters now because the conflicts are extremely violent. And I personally was assaulted not by the protesters, not by the policemen, but by some allegedly state-sponsored mobsters who are in support of the government. And I was doing a Facebook Live broadcast during that time of the attack. So it's like approximately 100,000 people were watching me being beaten to the floor live. So apart from that kind of attack, we as journalists are also frequently targeted by the policemen. We were denied our rights to access certain areas. We were kicked out of protest sites. And most of the time, we were specifically targeted by the policemen, and we suffered from, for example, pepper sprays or tear gas canister fired directly at us. So it's more or less like a conflict zone for journalists too.
You're back now in Hong Kong, and COVID-19 is also has its effect on Hong Kong. What what influence does it have now on the protest?
So the COVID-19 epidemic was started in Hong Kong in around January because we're quite close to mainland China. So protests have been put to a halt since then because people are very afraid of infections. But as we are entering the 5th day of zero case now, we see protests start coming back, and people have been, for example, they have been gathering in shopping malls in the name of shopping there, but they will like stop suddenly at a certain time that was pre-scheduled, and they start singing the protest anthem, for etc. And when the riot police come to the shopping malls, they disperse as if there was no gathering at all. So this is like a new kind of tactics that they use, because currently there was a ban of public gathering of more than 4 people in the name of the pandemic. But obviously that was very easily used by the authorities and the police to disperse or to persecute protesters or even just random citizens. But people are starting to adapt to that, and they are having very creative methods to bypass all these laws and still holding protests at this very difficult time.
What we saw in the contest result this year was a lot of photos about protests. A lot of it is about the youth protesting, a theme that the jury identified. Do you recognize this? Is the protest also in Hong Kong also led by young people?
First of all, the protests have no leaders per se. So it was a truly leaderless, decentralized protest. So people receive information from various Telegram channels run by nameless admins. But I would not say that this is like a youth movement as of before, like the Umbrella Revolution in 2014. It's more like a revolution of every single groups in the society. For example, what touched the people the most is we have protests of white-haired citizens who are in support of the young people, and we have housewives, for example. They take care of the young frontliners by cooking for them or by taking them in when they were kicked out by their family because of political differences. So the society have a very, very strong supportive network for the protest. And we see people from different sectors and different professions and different vocations also joining the protest in their own way. As in the video, we see a lot of creative posters who were made by people, say, from the profession of advertisement and design. And we see, for example, construction workers at the protest sites, at the front lines, helping protesters to build barricades. So it's basically a protest and a movement for all.
Yeah. You advised us a lot because you know a lot about the artworks and the inspiration the protesters had. In our exhibition, we see a whole range of things, ceramics, of course, but also manga posters, a lot of adaptations. Is it a very visually orientated protest? Are the people that protest also knowledgeable about the effect of visuals?
Actually, in a decentralized protest, as there's no leaders to go to, people communicate with each other mainly by posters, be it like posters you post in your communities for people to see as a hard copy, or posters you transmit through telegrams or WhatsApp. And one of the quite interesting strategy is people airdrop the posters to random people when they're on public transport. So for example, if you're taking a bus someday and suddenly your Apple phone will pop up and say somebody sent you a poster about a protest that's happening in 2 days' time, or somebody will send you a picture of police brutality, for example. So people actively use posters, use graphic designs as a way to communicate in this decentralized process. And we see an explosion of creativity of political communicative graphics, because Hong Kong has been like before, the political messages are mostly generated by political parties, which are not very creative. But because in this everybody has their own role, and that they can like put their message forward online without going through parties and stuff. So we see a lot of different designs, a lot of different aesthetics in this protest. So I would say creativity and art, it's a way for protesters to communicate with each other.
Yeah. One thing that struck me very much is that you see that a lot of it is inspired by Hollywood movies, Western internet memes, and also Eugène Delacroix, a famous French painter. Do you have any explanation for that? Why is the influence of that so big?
I do think because a lot of creative people from the advertising or the graphic design profession is also actively participating in this process. And Hong Kong has always been an international city, and we have been very much influenced by Hollywood movies or Western memes for a very long time already, and that's part of our internet language. So when people want to, say, draw attention in internet communities, on internet forums, memes become a very, very convenient way for the young people to communicate with each other. But Hollywood movies is not the only inspiration, I would say. For people of different age groups, we see, for example, classic Canton movies, classic local movies, or classic TV series, for example. So people design different posters and messages using different elements that suits a particular audience.
Mm. The impact of imagery, can you see that has an effect? We'll always talk about the impact of visuals, or a story that can change things, or a photo that can change things. Could you have one example of a visual that has had a huge impact and has been shared the most?
There's actually a lot of such cases, and some of them are from live broadcasts. For example, one of the most viral video that is shared is the live broadcast clip of me being attacked by the mobsters. And another one, I would say, it's how people is improvising with everyday items to fight off police brutality. For example, I do think like the strategy that Hong Kong protesters use to fight off tear gas has been spread worldwide. And we see protesters from Chile adopting that. We see protesters from Catalonia adopting those kind of things. And actually, protesters do not have weapons or do not have shields, but they will use, for example, cones on the road that the construction worker use. They use that to cover up the tear gas so that it won't burst. Or, for example, when the protests go into like residential communities, we see people using metal dishes that the Cantonese housewife used to cook fish, for example. They use dish to cover up the tear gas so that they can, and also we see a lot of young people, they use, for example, waterproof bags that you use for scuba diving, and they fill it with water, and they use a pair of tongs that you use for barbecue, and then you pick up the tear gas canister, put it in the water bottle, shake it off, and there it goes. I mean, so people are using everyday items, but very creative methods to fight off police weapons, and that have been very viral, for example, on Twitter, and protesters around the world have been adapting all these very makeshift but very, very effective strategies.
The culture of protest. Gwyneth Kwam Lai Ho, thank you very much. Promise me to be safe, and good luck in Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I will be joined on stage by Juliette Garms. She will do a panel interview with and a discussion about Ethiopian photography. As a joint project of the World Press Photo Foundation and Everyday Africa, the African Journalist Database is a directory of more than 500 emerging and professional African visual journalists. The APJD was to help African photographers better connect to the media in international economy. It also helps to connect international media to better understand the issues and the projects that African visual journalists consider important. Diversity is one of our values, and we work hard to have a true global representation in our contests. One of the winners, Mulugeta Ayena, represents Ethiopia, and we found it important to talk to him about his work and how Ethiopian photography is doing. Joining in this conversation is Aida Mulune, great photographer artist. She also did our Sam Presser lecture last year, and we're happy to have her back. Moderated by Juliette Garms, who is the project and outreach manager at World Press Photo, it is a pleasure to give them the floor for this conversation.
Thank you, Lars. Hello, Mulugeta. Hello, Aida.
Hi,
welcome.
Juliette.
Well, before we start the conversation, first I would like to introduce you to our online audience. So Mulugeta Ayena is an Ethiopian photojournalist and fine art photographer living in Addis Ababa. While his work covers a wide range of subjects, recurrent themes in Mulugeta's work are social transformations and their effects on identity and social relations. Mulugeta is a photographer for the Associated Press and works on regular assignments for prominent international organizations such as UNICEF, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, to mention a few. Aida Mulune is the founder and director of the Addis Photo Fest and a widely exhibited visual artist. Previously a photojournalist at the Washington Post, Mulune's work can be found in several international publications. Also, as an exhibiting artist, a collection of her images can be found in the permanent collection at the Smithsonian National Museum of African Arthood Museum and the Museum of Biblical Arts in the United States. So before we start, Mulugeta, on your winning story, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself a bit further. And I would like to ask you, how did you start your career as a photographer? And I think you also have a series that you would like to show us, which is called Spring in Ethiopia. So please tell us more.
Thank you very much for inviting me here. Yeah, as you said, I'm based in Ethiopia, working for the Associated Press. This series of Ethiopian Spring is I started capturing from this white movement, this picture in April 2008. The new Prime Minister came to the power, Dr. Abiy Ahmed. After he came in power, it's a lot of changing in Ethiopia. You know, before Abiy was coming in the power, the press also was very tough to working as a journalist here. After he came back in power, it's a lot of opening, it's a lot of promising, but we have to see it for the further. Still, there is some difficulty still where we are. It's a lot of challenges here. Yeah, I'm covering everything I can after he came into power, the people changing, the protest on the street, a lot of demand these days. You know, Ethiopia is more than 100 million people living here, a lot of different ethnic groups. We have a lot of issues in locally. So yeah, I'm trying to my best to cover all. But as I said, we have a lot of ethnic group. Some area I couldn't cover, but I try all my best to cover this all change until the elections, and I want to publish the book.
Right. Well, good luck with the book.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk about your winning story. So you won first prize in the Spot News category, and the name of the story is called Ethiopian Airline ET302 Plane Crash Sites. So I will just introduce the story and then we can talk about it. On 10th of March, Ethiopian Airlines flight ET302, a Boeing 737 MAX, disappeared from the radar 6 minutes after takeoff from Addis Ababa airport and crashed into a field, killing all 157 people on board. The impact was so great that both engines were buried in a crater 10 meters deep. A week after the crash, empty coffins were buried at a ceremony at the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Addis Ababa, as victims were unable to be identified. So you were there the day after the plane crash, and you took these incredibly powerful images that are incredibly emotional, universal, and we can really feel the grieving of the people. Can you bring us back to that day? How did you cover the story, and what was it like to be there?
Yeah, I remember I was having my breakfast when I hear the accident was happening, and I received several calls from my editors, my friends here. There were this plane crashes happening. It was Sunday morning. Yeah, immediately going to cover the story. I was going to an airport. I see some families was crying, you know, there is a dilemma, the plane was crashing, you know. We only hear a few things about the accident. No one cannot telling us what was happening, you know. We see only the tweets from the Prime Minister office, and you know, we didn't know this much was a big crash. This was the first day at the airport. Then next morning, I was going to the crash site very early morning, 4 o'clock. I was shocked when I there, you know, was very emotional. You can imagine the airplane is, we know it's big. You didn't see nothing. It was very, very, very emotional for me that day. And covering, the family was coming the next days. I was covering for the 1 week. Every day I was being there. I was very depressed during this time, seeing grieving families, you know, was very emotional. And yeah, I tried to make, given a space for the families. I was using my telephoto lens to give a space for the families. And yeah, I believe this project, these pictures, for the family to remember, for the loving ones. That's what I believe.
Yeah, and how was your prize received in Ethiopia, but also internationally? The response you got after people saw these incredible images.
Winning the World Press, it's a dream come true. Not only as an Ethiopian photographer, African, you know, we have a lot of young photographers here, especially they will be encouraging with this award. My win is for everybody in this industry in Africa. It's incredibly great. Everybody was calling, everybody happy. I was in the news here. So yeah, it's incredible.
I hope it will inspire many African photographers to apply to our photo contest and win. I would like to ask a question to Aida and to talk more about education in Ethiopia, but also on the continent in general. So Aida, you are an internationally exhibited photographer. You studied as a photojournalist and you evolved into more fine art photography. But you're also a passionate educator who dedicates a lot of her time to helping young talents and developing the photography scene in Ethiopia. Could you tell us more about the work that you do personally, but also as an educator and an organizer?
A lot of the work really came about when I arrived back to Addis Ababa in 2007. It was really out of the urgency that I saw that there's so much to share about Ethiopia, not just the negative, but also the positive things that we were accomplishing as a nation. And through that, my first priority was basically to develop young talents and really to offer them an international sort of access or networking. And over the time span of, giving different workshops and lecturing and what have you, I realized that it wasn't just about developing talents, but also I needed to educate the society on what is the role of photography, and also to show images from around the world, to show the full spectrum of what is, what is this field that we're in. And that's basically how the Addis Photo Fest came about. And a lot of people don't know, and I've said this before, they don't realize my background is actually in photojournalism. And I always say the greatest inspiration for me was moving back to Ethiopia, but also I pull a lot of that inspiration from my photojournalistic work. And through over the time, I've been teaching across Africa, trying to develop photojournalism, because I do believe photojournalism is the foundation for storytelling. A lot of young photographers are mistaken because they decide to develop style first before they actually develop the technical aspects of what is photography, understanding your equipment, understanding how to capture a moment. And my key emphasis within that is really, and I always tell the students, if you want to be rich and you want to be famous, don't be a photographer, because it's a long road. It's not something that you end up achieving quickly, So it requires a specific dedication. And this is why for me, Mulugeta is quite interesting, because I've known him for a long time and I've seen how his work has progressed. And I would have to say, he is for me, the best photojournalist. But what differentiates him is that he really is dedicated to the craft. He is really dedicated to the story. And often for photographers across Africa, what I say is that you are the witness for the future. So 30 years from now, when we look at what does Ethiopia look like, what does Africa look like, we're actually, in a sense, preserving this moment for that future. So I do believe education is quite relevant. And even when you look at institutions across the continent, we don't have standardized institutions. And to me, an institution like Market Photo in South Africa, which is run through Loheto, it's a very important institution. And this is why South African photographers are in the international market, offering us all these different perspectives. So through all of that, this is a road that I've chosen because I do believe, we have a saying in our country, what matters in your legacy is what you have passed on to the next generation, because it's not about the accolades. And yeah, of course we like, to be able to exhibit, to be able to sell our work. But at the end, for me, it's what am I passing on to the future generation? And this is why an event like the Addis Photo Fest, which is an international photo event, and it's something that I work very passionately with, because I do believe that my main interest is how do we shift perceptions on what photography is for the local audience, and how do we also shift perceptions for the international community to understand that we are quite aware of the impact of the image. We have been victims of these images for years, especially through the foreign gaze. And for me, it's creating a meeting ground of photographers from all over the world to really meet and learn from each other, because it's not just for us waiting for foreigners to come and teach us, but it's also a matter of what we teach them. And to me, it's a very specific agenda. And through that, you know, the festival has been quite, you know, an interesting event for me. And, you know, I'm not a curator or an art historian. I'm just a photographer who loves the work of other photographers. And I want to share this with my own people. And I want to make an impact. And we've seen this trend that has shifted. A lot of the photographers, you know, when we started in 2010, we started with only, I think, 5 photographers from Ethiopia that were presenting. Each edition, that number has increased because now young photographers understand there are relevance of photography, but also for them to understand that there is an opportunity for them, because the world is not only seen through one lens. We have to be able to see the world through different perspectives and different lenses. And I've said, you know, someone flying in, documenting, you know, for 10 days is different than someone who actually lives there and actually knows, you know, the way of the land. And this is the talent pool that I would like to support. And this is what I've been doing, you know, over the years, which is not easy, but, you know, has been my approach.
Very inspiring. Thank you. Mulugeta, I would like to follow up on what Ida said, because I think you two know each other for quite some time. Could you remember how you met and what has been your journey as a mentee from Ida? And I think also now you're also teaching. So how do you give back now, and how you've seen, how was the mentoring process that you've been through with Ida? Can you share some memories with us?
It was funny. I met Ida in 2010 in a press conference for Addis Photo Fest for the first edition. And she didn't show any Ethiopian photographers. I was very angry. I was asking a lot of questions. Why don't you call us? Why don't you participate Ethiopian photographers in this photo fest? You know, I started with my own studio and photography when I came in, you know, this career. Then I couldn't find the medium, my studio, to do what I'm doing now. Then I moved to photojournalism and working for the local English newspaper weekly. So in that press conference, even the other journalist was very upset. Oh, okay, the press conference is finished. You can speak with her later on. Then when the Addis Photo Fest 2010 opened, it's opened my eye. I have a lot of chance, you know. Here in Ethiopia, we don't have nothing to see some other photographers work. So Addis Photo Fest it's making me. I'm result of Addis Photo Fest. I'm result of Ida Muduna. After that, so many things are changing. I have a lot of experience, exposures, portfolio review through Addis Photo Fest. I meet so many photographers. Kibodi Akimbi is changing my perspective to see an African photographer. So yeah, it was a very, very interesting thing I have in my life, meeting with Aida.
Beautiful. And are you yourself now engaged with teaching younger photographers in Ethiopia, or are you mentoring some photographers? And what opportunities and challenges do you see they are facing at the moment?
I give a workshop through this photo fest. When the photo fest is coming, I give a short workshop for upcoming new photographers here. But it's a lot of challenge if you are living in Africa, and working as a journalist is not an easy thing. I meet so many photographers, newcomer photographers, but you know, they always told me they cannot survive with the income. With the if you are working with other journalists, you pay very less here. And we have only few medias. The print, how many we have? Four, three, five, like a few medias we have. And it's a big challenge. I always telling them how I sacrificed my life, you know. If you want to make money, you have to do something else, not photo here, not the photographer, you know. You cannot be millionaires or, you know, not a millionaires, but, you know, it's not an easy thing living here in Ethiopia and surviving with a photojournalist, but you need to be sacrificed. I'm here because my sacrifices, you know. So we have a lot of challenge, but we have still good, talented photographers are coming through Addis Photo Fest, and I hope to see them on the future to winning the World Press.
We hope that too, very much. Thank you. Ida, could you tell us more about this year of Addis Photo Fest? You remember we were chatting and you were telling me that you received like 800 applications this year. So it's growing fast, and the reach is growing also really fast, and it has helped a lot of photographers to gain visibility locally, but also internationally.
Yeah, so, you know, organizing the festival is quite an intense process, especially in the context of doing it in Ethiopia. In my office, we call it the beautiful nightmare. So it's quite challenging in itself. But it's really a work of love, and it's something that, you know, the energy and the mood is quite intense. And, you know, this year's submission, one thing that I have seen is we have really gone global, and it's quite amazing because for me, the idea was that having an international event to promote my country, to promote photographers from Africa, when we invite all of these international photographers to Addis Ababa, everybody's shooting, and then they go back to their country and they're able to share this different perspective that we have brought to them in their own country. And you know, what's fascinating is, for example, a photographer submitting work from a very random place in the world where they have never heard of Ethiopia. They don't know anything about Ethiopia, but it's a way for us to introduce Ethiopia to them as well, and to let them know that there is these different activities happening of building networks and building bridges. So through all of that, the submissions for this year, actually some of the selected photographers have been quite, been winning different awards. And, one of the key components for me, and as Mulugeta was mentioning, is the portfolio review is a review that we do from selected participants only for the photographers in Africa, because they're the ones that really need this support. Mm-hmm. And what we've seen, the trend is that soon as they have been given this feedback from sort of a global expert, including from Africa, from North America and Europe and so forth, these photographers are able to blossom. They find a sense of direction to get that input. And even we've started giving an award. And to me, it was quite important that we support photographers in different ways. And the mentoring process, it's needed. And this is what I try to encourage a lot of international photographers. When you come to Africa, please try to teach and pass on what you know. There's always a photo community in every country. I know this because we've seen the numbers increasing each year. But there's a lot of photographers that step into Africa, they take their photos and they're gone, not really making any connection points with the local photographers. And even having a sit-down coffee is just as important, because a lot of the times, because we don't have the proper infrastructure, getting that feedback, making that connection is quite important. So even for Mulugeta, when we did the exhibition at the Nobel Peace Center, Finbar O'Reilly was a really important person for us, because he could have just done that exhibition by himself. He came to Ethiopia, took photos, but since he knew that we were in existence, he reached out and he said, listen, I would like to collaborate with you guys. Let me know how I can help you. And this is the kind of energy as photographers globally we need to have these conversations. And this is why for me Addis Photo Fest is important, is because it is the meeting ground of the world. And the one thing that we say is, we're taking Africa to the world and bringing the world to Africa. And this is something I think, if we're talking about photography being a democratic tool, we really need to sort of practice what we preach.
Yeah, beautiful. I think I would like to conclude this talk with some work that we also do online through our online blog at WordPress Photo. I was in Addis Ababa last year in May, and I had the pleasure to meet 5 female photographers. So I made an article, and today I would like to share with you their pictures. So yeah, it's on. So this is Tion Alesselasseai. She's a street photographer, self-taught, based in Addis Ababa. She highlights the everyday life of Addis Ababans. As she says, Addis Ababa is one of the fastest growing cities, and I want to document the change and the process of the change. It's fascinating to me. Then we move on to Addis Aemiro, that you know very well, Aida, because she's been through your education program. This is a story about her grandfather, who was a photographer, one of the first photographers who had a studio in Ethiopia, in the northern Wollo region. And it's a very personal and beautiful story with some incredible archive images. That's him, Sefi. This is the work by Marta Tadesse. She's a humanitarian photographer and photojournalist based in Addis Ababa. This story is about Sifra. She was commissioned by UNICEF to photograph this health center, but then she developed a very personal connection with the story, and she's been following Sifra, giving birth to her child, and she's still following her, making pictures of her first birthday, for example, and it's a very beautiful, joyful story. Now we are looking at the work of Helena. Helena is a portrait photographer mainly, and documentary. She takes very intimate and delicate images. She's also doing a personal story about her relationship with her father. She says, I find it important to develop trust with people. If someone refuses to be photographed, I will have to respect that. I want the people I photograph to be comfortable when they are in front of the camera, and I want to tell their stories. Trust is important to me. Maheder Haile Selassie, also born and based in Addis Ababa. She's also the founder of the Center for Photography in Ethiopia. And she says of her work, my inspiration comes from the history, identity, memories, and experiences of my own and of people I engage with every day. I'm interested in urban changes, communities, and the environment. So this was just a glimpse of her work, of their work. I invite you to go look at the article if you want to know more about their work. It's online on our blog. So yeah, I just wanted to highlight there's an incredible diversity of work being produced in Ethiopia, and it was great to talk to you too. And I really hope we keep on seeing more and more winners, but also more stories and more cross engagement from and to Ethiopia. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Juliette Garms, and you, both of you. Great work, and we're looking forward to see more. Disturb is an urban media dedicated to international news and education. Photojournalism is a universal language with the power to demolish stereotypes, trigger discussion, and alert consciences. They paste on the street, and they are committed to fight against COVID-19 through an information and awareness campaign in the form of urban displays of large format photographs in New York and in Paris. And they have a short Instagram story with us to share. Please look them up on Instagram, Disturb. Here's a little clip. Since the opening of his studio in New York City in 1983, photographer Stephen Wilkes has become one of the most iconic photographers of America, widely recognized for his fine art, editorial, and also his commercial work. He's in many collections like the George Eastman Museum, the J.N. Michener Art Museum, the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, and many more. A monograph based on the work Ellis Island, Ghost of Freedom, was published in 2006 and was named one of the Time magazine's 5 best photo books of the year. Day to Night, his most defining project, began in 2009. Epic cityscapes and landscapes portrayed from a fixed camera angle up to 30 hours into one image. Day to Night was published by Taschen as a monograph in 2019. This year we invited Stephen Wilkes to be a speaker at our festival, which didn't take place, of course, but we're happy to have him live from his studio from New York. Stephen, for you it's a good morning, I think. Sound is being put on, so just hang in there.
Okay.
There you are. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, it's good to be here with you guys. Really great to see you all and to see so much great photography.
If it's a client, pick it up.
I'm going to make sure that's turned off. We got it. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's okay. It's okay. Stephen, great to have you here. We will show some work that you have shared with us with a slideshow, the work from Ellis Island, the Day to Night series, but also your environmental work that you want to share. And also we're going to get a sneak peek of the work that you're doing right now. But let's first start with the work of Ellis Island. Talk us through it a little bit. Why is it so important for you, this work?
Well, it was really the first major documentary work that I did. Frankly, working for me, it was a passion project. I discovered Ellis Island in 1998 on what was supposed to be probably about a 1-hour assignment, and it became a 5-year project. I spent 5 years documenting the south side of Ellis Island, which was the largest infectious disease ward in when it was built in 1907. So I was, it was powerful for me because for the first time, I'd never done interior architectural photographs before, but these pictures had something else going on in them. I felt a sense of not only history in the light, but actually some of our ancestors. And it became more than just a documentary work. It actually, people wanted to live with these pictures in a way. So once you have that experience, you start realizing that there's a new kind of power that I had discovered in being able not only to make beautiful work, but actually make work that inspired people to recognize a forgotten place. And that led me to Bethlehem Steel, and that's what this series is that you're showing now. A few years after I did Ellis, I got asked to these were all, by the way, based on magazine stories. The first one was, I was documenting Ellis for, actually it was Encyclopedia Britannica from an old editor, art director from Life magazine had called me after Life had folded. And subsequently, I got a phone call from Archaeology magazine. And they said, would you be interested in documenting Bethlehem Steel? So they both shared this unique sort of passion that I have, which is to document history in a way. And that was really the beginning of my journey, I think, as a documentary and sort of merging my art with documentary photography.
Yeah. Do you feel comfortable with, there's some photographers that don't like the word artist. Sometimes they say the word artist is on decline in photography. Do you mind being called an artist, an editorial photographer, commercial photographer? Doesn't matter?
I don't really care about labels. If somebody wants to call me an art photographer, fine. It's to me, I'm a storyteller. That's really what I believe my work is about. I'm communicating an idea and a story, and I try in my work to give people an emotional connection to whatever it is that I'm photographing. That's really what I try to do.
You also made a series of work about disasters hitting New York City. We're going to look at some work. Katrina, I would say, or no, Katrina was in the south, right? Which hurricane was this?
Well, the first one was actually this image is actually this was Hurricane Sandy. Time magazine commissioned me to actually, for the first time, a group of photographers. We all went out with our cameras and we were uploading images into Instagram. This was the first time a live story was being carried on Instagram by a major media outlet. And so I was documenting my neighborhood in Fairfield County. And this is when, that is actually low tide, believe it or not, during Hurricane Sandy, to give you an idea how strong and ferocious the water was. This photograph was actually during Hurricane Katrina. That is an image of I was in, after Katrina's hit, I went down 6 months afterwards to actually see, because the media had left essentially. Everybody just assumed the story was over. And so 6 months later, I went to Bay St. Louis. I visited, of course, the lower Ninth Ward and that whole area. And I made this photograph of and it seemed to me very a poignant image, and it was a breakthrough image for me, frankly. I call these types of pictures almost post-apocalyptic. And I found that there was this TV set lying in the sand. I saw it during high tide, and I came back at sunset, and the tide had left. And for me, it was very, very apropos for what was really happening, which is the media had essentially dropped this story. This photograph is, yes.
Yeah, it's an aerial photography. You're also doing an aerial photography, because you're going to see a little glimpse of a story that you're doing right now at National Geographic. This is photo. It's insane. This is just, normally this would have been on the beach, or, I mean, is it still like this?
No, it's gone. It was removed. But after one of the big stories, when I was doing the piece for Time, I was getting phone calls. I have a twin brother who lives in California, and he says, "What's the big deal? It's a Category 2 hurricane. I don't know what's everybody's so crazy." And I realized that as a journalist, we weren't really telling the story the right way, that we were too in it, and you had to get above it. And so on my own, I called a helicopter pilot I know very well, and I said, "Can you get a machine up so we can go and fly down I want to cover the whole sort of eastern coast and get over New Jersey." I heard there was a roller coaster that got pulled into the ocean. And I was able to do that. And when we circled this, the image that was actually in my mind was one that, if you remember the original Planet of the Apes, where Charlton Heston is riding bareback, at the end of the film, he sees the Statue of Liberty, the torch of the Statue of Liberty rising out of the water. That was all that was left of New York. This was it's one of the most powerful things I've ever seen. I've never seen the Atlantic Ocean this calm as well. Really, something that's really memorable.
The work that you're doing right now, we're going to go through 5 or 6 images. We have to go a little bit fast because National Geographic is going to still publish it. So it's a little glimpse of you shooting the empty streets of New York, I guess, right?
Yeah, I rented a helicopter. This was a picture. I wanted to document New York in this moment in time from above, so I got special permission to fly over New York. This was one of those moments where I actually had a picture in my head. I was hoping to capture New York aglow in a fire, the fever that was over New York. Here, this is of course, the Empire State Building, which only for a week, they actually started lighting it up red and white as a tribute to the first responders and the healthcare workers who were literally saving so many lives every night. Shooting at night over New York is really kind of a unique experience. This was looking down Park Avenue, and for me, it was just an apt metaphor for the darkness that had enclosed on the city. This was an early morning shot. I've always I love going to photograph the city, and this is a view that's from the Kosciuszko Bridge, a cemetery, and there's the word courage in a sign in that picture. This photograph is, of course, Central Park, and you can just see, the spacing of people in this photograph reflects the moment in time we're in, right? Social distancing is quite evident.
Soon to be published at National Geographic, I think.
Yes.
Your work day to night. This is a story about Vanity Fair. We can go through this a little bit quickly.
Yeah, we go faster. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a story that you found it important to tribute the workers.
Yes. My hometown workers, I decided I wanted to photograph the people who were the essential workers in my hometown. And so I went out and I documented them, the ones who are making such a difference in all of our lives, and who get so, really they're just unrecognized right now and taking huge personal risks. And I went to these various local places that are important to me, and the doctors who are making a huge difference right now, the firemen, and made pictures that just sort of evoke these stories. it was a special experience for me to do this for my local town because I was inspired by a beautiful story of a young girl who had suffered from. Her name was from Maryland. Her name was Liana, and she was just an amazing young lady who died at 27 years old. So I wanted to, and she was, somebody who worked in the giant supermarkets and actually passed away because she cared more about her customers than her own personal health. And so I was inspired by that story.
You're famous for your work day and night, big photographs made up about how many photographs do you put in there? It also shows the day and the night in one image.
So day to night is kind of what I call is my primordial soup of all the things I love about the medium of photography. I photograph from a single point of view, anywhere from 12 to 36 hours, and I capture specific moments of time as light and time changes. And then at the end of the day, I go back and I decide where day begins and night ends, and I call it a time vector. And you see each one of these pictures has a different vector of time. And then it takes months to do this, but we layer each specific moment where they were in time into one master photograph. And it's compressing these two very discordant worlds into one single image. That really is a reflection of my memory and my experience of what that day was like.
You also
you
also applied it now to what you say is very important environmental work. You have applied the technique because you want to show wildlife that also is in one frame. Sometimes multiple animals in one frame. There's one frame from this one. Can we show it on the screen?
Yes.
This is incredible, huh?
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is I spent actually 26 hours in a blind in the Serenera. So this is not a reserve. This is the middle of the national park in Tanzania. And I witnessed all these animals sharing a watering hole. And the incredible experience was they never even grunted at each other. This is during a 5-week drought. And I walked away after this experience realizing that the animals have this incredible sort of a communication that we don't really understand, and this fantastic connection to the planet that we don't understand. And it really inspired me to want to use this technique to tell a deeper and more meaningful series of photographs about wildlife and the way the world exists now. So with a generous grant from the Geographic, I was able to do a series of photographs on bird migration around the world. That was the black-browed albatross in steeplejace in the Falklands. These are pink flamingos in Nairobi. It's called forgetting the name of the lake right now, Lake Bogoria. And of course, these are an amazing thing to witness. These are not nesting birds, they're just feeding in Lake Bogoria. And I witnessed an extraordinary, sort of ritual. Those birds in the foreground actually are marabou storks. I then ended up my trip in Scotland and I photographed on a place called Bass Rock. And these are another species, the northern gannet. And subsequently, my work is now moved really almost exclusively into endangered species. Here you are in a place called Bella Coola outside of Vancouver. These are grizzly bears. So I'm fascinated by being able to spend such extraordinary amount of time focused on a single place. I work in the most traditional manner, and people don't understand that generally. They think I run a time lapse or something. I hand cock a lens, sometimes 2,200 times, and I photograph what I see. So I work in the most traditional way. And this is one of my most recent pieces. Of course, this is the polar bears in Churchill, Manitoba. And
great, Stephen. It's more in the back. I think there's polar bears walking around. You have to promise us to come back to Amsterdam, right? Because I know that you have one of your day-to-night photos about Amsterdam, and you love to be here. But unfortunately, this year it didn't work out.
Yes.
I looked through the beautiful book that you have published with Taschen. It's a big book, very heavy, but it shows the work in its most beautiful form. And I hope to see you in Amsterdam soon. And thank you for your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure. And thank you for having me.
Stephen Wilkes.
And stay healthy, everybody. Thank you.
The introduction for now of the Digital Storytelling Contest. The Digital Storytelling Contest has 2 headline awards, the World Press Photo Interactive of the Year and the World Press Photo Online Video of the Year. We are happy to share with you 2 productions, Battleground Polyu by DJ Clark, Zanini, Pantekoek and Zhao Li, and also Scenes from a Dry City, made by François Verster, Simon Wood, Charlotte Cook and Laura Portras.
My name's DJ Clark and I'm a visual journalist based in Hong Kong. I've been in Greater China for 15 years. The longer you're here, the more you realize how much you still have got to learn about the place. The film that we've made was going to be something that people would look back in time. It would become part of Hong Kong's history. I've been covering the protests for about 6 months, up until the point where the Polyu demonstration happened. During that process, I had been playing around with equipment and trying to get something that worked. The 360 camera, these are very small cameras, they're very lightweight cameras, and I could capture action when I was in the midst of it. The biggest thing about this project for me is the opportunity for future audiences to be able to experience this monumentous event that happened in Hong Kong. As far as I know, this will be the first opportunity that anyone will be able to really place themselves in that event by using this new technology. And I'm hoping that future generations, future audiences are going to have an experience that will allow them to understand the event and what happened. Being able to sit down with some of the protesters at that time and having long conversations with them about what their motivations were and what they were hoping for the future, or what they were hoping that was going to come of this. I think I was able to get a much better understanding of that. It feels very much that it's something that will last into the future.
My name's Simon Wood. I'm a filmmaker based in Cape Town.
My name is François Verster. I'm an independent documentary filmmaker living and working in Cape Town, South Africa. Both Simon and I were astounded when we started reading about the prospect of day zero, the day when the taps would be turned off, arriving. I think the first time that was mentioned was in January of the year we made the film, and predictions were that the taps would be turned off by March already. We just thought this would make a fantastic opportunity to give insight into Cape Town. You know, as you know, it's a very fragmented, socially divided and unequal city.
You cannot make a profit out of water.
I thought it would be interesting to create this sort of dialogue, or almost of documentary genres, between 2 filmmakers within one film. I think that's best shown in the film when you see my work recording the golfer, and that's intercut between Francois's observational work with the protest in Cape Town. The initial hook of the film was, let's use water as a vehicle to explore societal dynamics.
Because when water flows, you can't stop it. It will go where it goes, and water is indifferent.
So let's look at an environmental crisis in a different way, how it's going to affect societal division, which is clear and obvious, but rarely discussed.
The Photo Evidence Foundation works at the intersection of human rights and photography through the Photo Evidence Book Award with World Press Photo and the Photo Evidence W Award for Women Photographer. Photo Evidence publishes high-quality books for humanistic photographers focused on human rights. Habibi by Antonio Facilongo is the recipient of the 2020 Photo Evidence Book Award with World Press Photo. And in this short video, our World Press Photo bookstore manager, Edi Peters, will talk you through the book. The book is available soon in the Photo Q bookstore, which is based in the World Press Photo House in Amsterdam.
Habibi, the Arabic word for my love, darling, my dear. Habibi is a story about daily life in Gaza of the Palestinian women who are married to men serving decades or lifelong sentences in Israeli jails. At first sight, the book seems to give a romantic vision, but don't let it fool you. There's a harsh reality underneath. It is a love story, but also a story of survival and perseverance. The women succeed in getting pregnant by smuggling semen out of prison in chocolate bars and hurrying to an IVF clinic. If successful, they grow up the kids in a situation much more awkward than a COVID-19 lockdown. The book contains a great poem by Taha Mohammed Ali, beginning with a merciless thought about revenge, slowly developing into more peaceful thoughts. Every now and then we can have a look at prison life on transparent pages, portraits of the family archives and secret pictures from inside the prison. Habibi is a photo book by the Italian photographer Antonio Facilongo. He won the Photo Evidence Book Award this year. The award is annually presented at the World Press Photo Festival. Beautiful creative direction of Habibi has been done by the famous photo book designer Ramon Peth. Congratulations, Antonio Facilongo.
A great selection of photo books at Photo Evidence. We have now on stage Ilvi Nico Kacin, an independent photographer and multimedia journalist based in the Netherlands. She has worked in many parts of the world with a focus on Africa, and in the news as a documentary photographer, she covers current affairs and contemporary social issues. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Der Spiegel, NRC Handelsblad, Telegraph magazine and Stern, among others, and was exhibited at Visa pour l'Image in 2012. Her pictures have been exhibited in several museums and photo festivals. Accolades include a Canon AFJ Award, 2 awards at World Press Photo, first prize in POI's issue reporting multimedia story, and during her work in South Africa in 2007, she became intrigued by the Born Frees, the first generation of youngsters born after apartheid. During a time frame of 12 years, Nico Kacin portrayed them in her own personal, intimate style. Equality is there on paper, but the majority of young people believes the white South Africans still have better chances, and the legacy of centuries of inequality is still there. In 2012, the second digital storytelling contest, Afrikaner Blad, won and was seen as groundbreaking and an inspiration of many digital storytellers. She's here, Ilvi Nico Kacin. Ilvi.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to have somebody in the studio.
Yeah,
to not be only by myself. Of course, with Juliette as well. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you.
Afrikaner Blad, 8 years ago. How do you look back at that story now?
Well, I think a lot has changed in my storytelling. It was a big breakthrough for my career, so it was a really important moment to have Afrikaner Blad. Let me see if this, there we go. This was this was the image that actually won, besides the multimedia piece. And a lot has changed because ever since working on this, I continued the story. And I think the storytelling became a lot more diverse because this story, of course, was focused on one group, one specific group of South African youngsters who were very racist. It's a right-wing group. It's a fringe organization. And yeah, I will show a little clip of the interactive, or not the interactive, the multimedia back then, which was basically video and photography combined into one piece.
Wel in al eerste het 'n baie sweet spot ergens in sy hart waar hy omgee vir sy troepe.
Nou weet jy hoe Ek voel dat ek die oupa figuur is, of die vader figuur is ten opsigte van hierdie seuns. Nee, hy sê dit. Bobbe Jan klim die berg om die boere te vererg. Dis 'n manier om 'n mens te terg. Wat is die grootste verskil tussen jou en 'n swart man? Die cortex. Onthou die woord, die cortex. Hy kan nie daai beplanning doen nie. Nie omdat hy swart vel het nie omdat hy 'n plat neus het nie omdat hy dik lippe het nie, omdat sy cortex 120 gram ligter weeg as jou cortex.
As ek skree bravo is bravo op, okay? Nee. Ons sê kolonel.
Ja, ons lei hulle speel op. Maar terselfdertyd terwyl hulle speel is ons besig om hulle op te lei vir 'n oorlogssituasie. 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4.
So yeah, it was a very difficult story to work on because I worked on it together with Alice van Gelder. At the time, she was writing and started to do video while we were at the camp. This is actually where we both started to do video. We had never really done it before, so it was a really, really big surprise that we then won first prize at the digital storytelling contest.
I remember well being so shocked by this story, but also the impact that it has. The photos were there, but also the moving image, the sound, to hear them speak. It has been quite an inspiration for many photographers that have moved also to digital storytelling. How do you look 8 years from now? Has that digital storytelling landscape have changed a lot? Is that just technique, or is there other things also that play a role?
I think two things changed. I think the technique changed a lot. Back then it was video, we integrated photography, and this is something we saw other photographers do. For instance, Danny Wilcox-Fraser, and he inspired us to make our video in this way. But I think another thing that changed as well is the internet became so much bigger. So now the interactive storytelling is a bigger part, and you integrated it into the contest. Now you have websites that are interactive, and I think what's funny is that people still reach out about Born Free, about Afrikaner Blood. So there's still people now emailing me about, oh, I remember that it won at the World Press, it was an inspiration. Mm-hmm. So I think storytelling will always be the same. You tell a story, whatever way you tell it, it doesn't really matter as long as the story comes across. But I think for back then it was quite a new thing to combine it in this way.
You kept working in Africa, South Africa,
yes,
for a long, long, long time, 12
years.
And this ended up in the Born Free project.
It did.
Photography and moving images, film, video, everything combined.
Everything combined. This was also because, of course, a story like that, the one Afrikaner Blood, it got a lot of backlash as well, because people felt it put too much attention on a small fringe organization, and therefore we continued the project and started focusing on other young South Africans. And as you see here, these are different youth groups that we focused on, and they were all named in the National Youth Policy in South Africa. This is a youth policy written by a group of people that were basically planning a better future for the youth that was born in freedom after Nelson Mandela became president. And I went and looked for all different young people in South Africa, from different age groups, from different color, from different background. And I focused on these different youth groups for the past 12 years. I'm based in the Netherlands, but I flew back to South Africa almost every year to focus on different young people. And it became a collaboration as well between the young South Africans and myself, because it was quite difficult, even though I had the youth policy as kind of a guide to guide me through which young people to focus on. It was mainly the Born Frees that in the end were pointing out, like, okay, you have to include cities, you have to include rural places, rich and poor and extremely rich, and from different racial backgrounds. And for instance, this guy, Kevin, he's a gay young South African based in Johannesburg. And I included the LGBTQ community because a lot of South Africans were saying they have to be in your project, because for them a lot also changed in 1994 when Nelson Mandela became president. it was the LGBTQs that also got the right to marry each other. Gay marriage was all of a sudden also legal. So I included them and this lovely couple. And what I tried to do in the last 2 years is to also, besides all the pictures, I did a lot of video and I made 2 short documentaries. A short one and actually a long one that was broadcasted within the Netherlands.
Do you consider the project, the story ended? It's always the danger of photography. Okay? I have to go one more time.
Yes.
But after 12 years, do you consider it a completed project?
Actually, when in May last year, I had a big exhibition. You were there in the Netherlands, in Hilversum. I think I have a picture of it here, right here. And I remember people asking back then, is it finished now? And I would tell them, yes, it's finished. I've been shooting this for 12 years, and 2019 was the year that it was 25 years after apartheid. So I figured, okay, it's done. But, exactly, yeah, you hear the but. It's never done, because I've been back to South Africa already after the exhibition opening. I've been shooting again. I'm still in contact with Born Frees that I photographed 12 years ago. I'm in contact with most of them still. So, and I think it's a story that doesn't necessarily have an ending. And in my long documentary, I asked all the Born Frees, hey, could you tell me what you think your life will look like in 25 years from now? And I kind of did that to keep an opening to go back to them and do another story about them in 25 years.
You just showed many forms that it took on. So
yes.
Publications, online, is that the way you always work right now? It's not just a magazine anymore. It's not just you have a book, you have a digital story.
Yes.
Is that the way to do it right now?
I think so. I think why would you leave something out, basically? I made a book because I feel it's for a different audience than the interactive. The reason I wanted to make an interactive, and I'm going to show you a short clip to introduce the interactive long read, I made it mainly because I wanted to be able to show the Born Frees in South Africa. They were like, oh, we want to see, and the documentary is not broadcasted here. And I figured it would have a bigger audience, and it did. So together with a great team, I produced an interactive long read.
Let's take a look.
And I'm going to show you a short clip.
Born Free generation, we don't have power.
Born Free too, yeah.
Is a huge blessing, and
that's how it feels to be born free.
All of us could be born
free. So hard.
Born free.
Black and white and all the other races have an equal chance. In theory.
Born free.
Oh, shit.
What the fuck does it even mean?
South Africa is heading towards a better space. We were in a slump, but we're getting there.
But I feel like I'm going to have something nice.
Yeah, it was actually amazing to be working on an interactive piece again after so many years. And it was co-produced by Henrik Kastenskov, a great Danish photographer, filmmaker. And it was inspirational to actually put all the 12 years together, mix all the images and the video, and he kind of made it come to life together with a web editor, Reinier Martin. And yeah, we actually went through to the last rounds of the World Press this year, and we were just waiting like, oh, are we going to be in? And we weren't, but we were so proud that as a small team that we made it so far. And I think it was an amazing inspiration for me, for myself, to in 2012, when we won at the Digital Storytelling Contest, to continue this project. It was such a big step into the real photography world, because before this award, I was working for local Dutch newspapers, and all of a sudden after the award, the New York Times started calling and Time magazine started calling, and it really changed a lot for the story as well. It just spread so widely. So yeah.
World Press Photo Award as a thrusting force to get you into the industry.
Yeah, I always tell students, because I'm teaching a lot now as well, I always tell students, just send in if you feel like your work is good enough, send it in, because a lot of them are too shy to do it. And I think it's ridiculous. Just do it, because you never know. We never expected to win.
Yeah.
And we did.
We need as many ambassadors like you to push it. The book, it's also out, self-published?
Self-published. It is actually designed by the girl that you see on the front, on the cover. Her name is Wilmarie Detlef. She is one of the Born Frees herself. And she thought of the idea of printing 1994 copies, which is the year in when Nelson Mandela became president. And I self-published it, and it's been a huge success, to my surprise in a way, because I thought, 1994 copies is quite a lot for a photography book. So I didn't expect it to go so quickly, but I've been in my office wrapping books, sending them on a daily basis. So it's been crazy. It's a fold-out book because I wanted to make something that also matched the story of young South Africans growing up in freedom. I didn't want to make a normal book because they are so young and vivid and vibrant, and I felt it kind of had to be something different than usual, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word. Yeah.
How many do you have left?
I don't know. Someone asked me recently, but only a few hundred.
Okay, so if people have to be fast, either through your website or through the PhotoCube bookshop.
Yep.
Now you're working with us on a new project, at least you were, because World Press Photo Foundation, along with its partners, MIAP Foundation, Message in a Photo Foundation it is, and the Solutions Journalist Network have come up with inaugural commissions by the Solutions Visual Journalism Initiative to promote and produce visual journalism with a solutions focus. Now, what is that, a solutions focus? It changes the frame of a story. The approach is a particular subset of a broader movement for constructive journalism. Solutions visual journalism is image-led rigorous reporting on a response to a problem. It's not about the images alone or the images as illustrations. This means powerful photographs and or video are the central feature of solutions visual journalism. The first time you heard about it, did you fully understand what this was focusing on?
No, not really. I thought, when I first heard it, I thought, oh, this is just a positive news approach. And positive news, I love positive news, but I also know that it's quite difficult to get positive news published. Although I must say in current times, it's a bit easier. But that's what I thought solution meant, like a solution to a problem, so it has to be positive. But then I went to the World Press office and I spoke to you and I spoke to some of your colleagues and I spoke to Message in a Photo, and they explained very thoroughly to me what it actually is. And I now know that it basically has to show the solution to a problem. And the problem that I picked is not even, I'm not sure if I would call it a problem, but what I did, I'm focusing on co-housing groups, people living together. And they do that for different kinds of reasons. Some people live together in co-housing because it beats loneliness. Some of them do it because it's cheaper. Some of them, there are different reasons to do it, and they're all actually a solution to a different issue. And the images that you see here are of a co-housing project here in the Netherlands. And I think most people who live in there are above 65. And they moved in there because they wanted to feel community. And I think in the Western world, this is kind of what we're lacking sometimes, because most of us don't even know our neighbors. And I think it's a beautiful way of living. And I was inspired to photograph this because I'm personally also interested in maybe one day living like this. But I had to stop photographing.
Yeah. Why? Because, the COVID-19, of course. Yeah, because of this. What do you do now? That's going to take a while. Did you just pause it? Yeah, so I paused it for now. It was very interesting because most of the elderly in that community were like, oh no, you can just come over. And I was like, no, some of them are almost 100 years old and I don't want to risk anything. So I paused the project for now and I really hope I can continue soon. And in the meantime, I'm shooting a lot again for different clients on the COVID-19, like most of us are trying to do now as well. Dangerous? Difficult? Difficult. Dangerous, it's such an invisible thing.
of course it's dangerous, but I'm well protected. I'm wearing all the masks and the gloves and everything. It doesn't feel dangerous, weirdly enough, but it is difficult, especially in the Netherlands, to get access to hospitals, to get access to these kind of places. That's actually a lot of work to organize.
Do you experience new things about it that you haven't seen before, that you haven't read in the news? Does it surprise you what you see and photograph?
Some of the things do, yeah. Like one of the doctors told me, one of the IC doctors told me a couple of days ago, this is gonna be a spike, or what do you call it, in October, November again, and then probably next summer again. And I read about that, but hearing a doctor say that, like, oh, you guys are gonna be inside for a while, that really kind of freaked me out, because I keep thinking, oh, our lives have changed for now. Mm. But it now seems like our lives have changed for forever, or for, I don't know. Yeah. So that's was a bit shocking to me.
You as a photographer, a storyteller, you travel a lot. Suddenly you're not traveling at all. You're home.
I'm home. Yeah,
you're home, and you have to shoot work close at home.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm actually. This is this next one is better. This is a picture of me at home with my boyfriend Thomas. Usually I'm traveling constantly. Now I'm at home, so we have to find a new way of balancing things. I worked on a diary as well, like a lot of photographers have done, kind of to make sense of the new situation we are in. We worked on a big group project with 7. I'm part of 7 photo agency. And this is part of that project. It's called Notes of the Pandemic. And all of us, the 7 photographers around the world have been photographing their lives during the pandemic.
You talked about being an educator as well. You talked about being connected. You're a member of 7. Is it 7 is an agency, or what is it now?
It's an agency. It's an agency, but it's a lot more now. There's the 7 Academy. I think, especially now, what changed a lot is that besides photographing, we've always been doing workshops. We've always done teaching, most of us have at least, and now all of a sudden this all turned, now it's all online. So we started 7 Interactive, our masterclass, the big masterclass that's now actually open, I think until the 14th of May, has moved online. It's a masterclass taught by several of the 7 photographers, led by Maciek Nadrabalek, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Stefano De Luigi. And these masterclasses are amazing. Like, it was amazing to do them in real life, but the last one that we did, I was part of it, and it moved online. And I thought it would be so difficult to do this online, but it's actually been an amazing. It works actually, yeah.
7 is a good example of an organization moving quickly online. I was watching it, and I was like, yeah, they have been talking about it. They move fast, they do it, and before we know, the masterclasses were there, online teaching.
Yeah, it's true. It was really quick. I think we're all together in a big WhatsApp group, for instance, and people were already talking about, our lives, traveling is going to be over. Things are going to be different. How are we going to be talking to our audience? How are we going to be with our new students? And then they just created this amazing website. It's beautiful and it's great. We have different masterclasses, talks, webinars. Can I show you one short video? I see we're almost running out of time.
I think we're out of time. So what we should do is go to your Instagram handle, because we talked about if you forward on the clicker.
Let me go.
Because what we talked about is that your Instagram handle, Ilfi Nio, you're trying to get to 10,000 followers. So let's see if we can get all of our viewers now to go to Instagram and follow you. See if we can get you over the 10,000. How important is Instagram for you as a photographer?
It's really huge, but I was a slow adapter, so I started a bit late. But I think most of my assignments now come through Instagram. People seeing images, reaching out. And I'm able to talk to followers, which is amazing. So yeah, it's important.
Let's see if we can get you over 10,000.
I hope so.
Ilfi Nico Kachin, thank you very much for being with us in the studio. I hope that one day you will fly again. but the stories in the Netherlands are also something to cover right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We've come to the end of a long and rich program. We sincerely hope you have been able to experience some of the ideas, the programs that we would like to show in the World Press Photo House. It is a translation also of the festival to an online situation. And we're happy with our partner, Pakhuis de Zwijger, who incredibly fast moved into a studio. Actually, this space now is most of the time filled with 300 people. It turned out into one of the most successful online studios that we do, that we can work in, and it has a live cast every day. I would really like to thank the team of World Press Photo Foundation, who made a huge effort getting this program so quickly together. Anne, Colette, Audra, Adi, Juliette, Lars, not this Lars, other Lars, and the amazing communication team, but of course the whole team of World Press Photo is working very hard at this situation right now to get things going and keep going. We want to thank all the photographers and the guests that have been so kind to share their time and their work with us, and we hope to see you more live in the futures, bringing you back to Amsterdam to show the work and to meet each other again. If you are interested in the winning photos, look on our website, but also look at our newly designed photo book, which is published by Lano, the yearbook, as you can see behind me on the big screen. It is a very beautiful, newly designed photo book, something that you can order online, PhotoCube box shop, of course, but any store that you have locally. Soon it will be distributed, and I hope you enjoy it. At World Press Photo, we're very grateful for the support of the Dutch Postcode Lottery, the partners, Egon, PwC, our associates, our program partners, MIAP, Tony Chocoloni Foundation, and many, many more. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you will join us in our mission to connect the world to the stories that matter.